Hi, so what's it all about? Abbots Wood. Abbots Wood is actually a place in Sussex near Brighton, just sort of east of Brighton, and it's the place where I first discovered mycelia, or fungus or mushrooms that live mostly throughout the year underground and have a symbiotic relationship with the flora and fauna around where they grow. In particular, the relationship between mycelia and tree roots and production of starches that feed the tree, and the tree in turn producing nutrients that feed the fungi, is I found quite extraordinary. Anyway, the point being that Abbots Wood is where I first started to look literally beneath the surface of things, and this is way back in the days, maybe 40 years ago. So Abbots Wood inspired the kind of idea of investigation, analysis, trying to seek out deeper roots of meaning behind the surface impressions of things. But also, Abbots Wood stands for ability boy, which is me, on the stump, as it were, proselytizing or advocating or prognosticating about a subject. Abbots, a ability boy, on the stump, and wood, but this time wood spelt with Would. Wood. Then there follows, what would the billowy boy on the stump talk about? Would, for example, talk about his current obsession, with the supposedness of alternative facts, or the undermining of current objective truth. But that's a kind of philosophical, high level, kind of fairly abstract concern. But the lived concern right in front of our faces today, this is 2025, is the rise of the far right and the reactionary movement amongst many of our fellow beings of the masculine gender to reassert their power or their place within what they perceive as the natural hierarchy. And within that kind of school, I have a number of targets that I want to kind of go for. And I don't just mean to discuss, as it were, dispassionately. These are people that I detest to the core of my being. In turn, we will look at Andrew Tate. We will look at Jordan Peterson. We will look at Douglas Murray, Niall Ferguson, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Tommy Robinson. The list goes on and on and on. These are politicians, these are billionaires, these are social media superstars, these are YouTube champions or whatever. And they're all very different, and I don't want to just wrap them up as one homogeneous group, but they do have this in common, I believe. A reaction against liberal left, what they see and describe as postmodernism, which is not it, or cultural Marxism, which is not it, or wokeism, which again is not it. But these are terms and concepts that they've adopted as the foundational principles of their trying to reintroduce some sense of Judeo-Christian orthodoxy. What's happening is, it seems to me at least, is a striving on the right to make up for a loss, and the loss was the post-war settlements in which we collectively as a species set up the United Nations, established some principles, not kind of fully or universally accepted, but principles about the objectivity of science and maths, which transcends or cuts across all cultures, all politics, all classes, all personal identity issues. But all of that was unfolding, as it were, under the umbrella of some vague notion of liberal democracy as being the way to go. But all of that's broken down of late, and now we've seen the resurgence or reassertion of this kind of machismo, this macho. Donald Trump is like the prime example of it, but Elon Musk going on stage and doing the Nazi salute. I know some of you don't believe it was a Nazi salute, you think it was a gesture of goodwill to his fan base, but it is what it is. Look at it with your eyes, you can see it's definitely a Nazi salute. What it's that kind of Andrew Tate, I'm the top chimp kind of thing, you know, or might be lobster or top something. But underneath it all, there is this sense of a natural hierarchy that's been defiled by wishy-washy tree-hugger leftists, people obsessed with gender, identity politics and inequality, fuzzy-duzzy, you know, millennials, whatever, woke, obsessed, political correct, gone mad kind of idiots like me, and it's the reassertion of the real man. Now, I've got 5 boys and 2 girls and 6 grandchildren and 3 grandsons, and I celebrate the fact that none of them are of that kind, of that ilk. All very different, and I'll talk about them and perhaps even interview some of them as we go forward. But there it is. I want to look underneath the surface of things. Abbott's Wood is my working title. I'm hoping to incorporate lots of different methods of discourse and discussion, and to have interviews with some people that hopefully it's going to be a mix of people that you might know and some that you will never have encountered before, and we're going to go off on all sorts of tangents. So Abbott's Wood includes things like looking at the arguments for moral realism, something I subscribe to, but I don't think many people do these days. Objective truth against, if you like, subjectivism, something again that I subscribe to that not many appear to do so. Free will against determinism, and these are obviously of philosophical concern, but they sit within kind of a broad cosmology of terms and issues and concerns, which can be very, very crudely divided into 2 kinds of ways of looking at the world. One is around the nature of reality, which we call ontology, and the other is around the understanding or knowledge about that reality, which we call epistemology. And I'm going to get into the weave of this because I think it's really important as part of our rejection of this absolute relativist notion that reality and meaning is entirely what you want it to be as an individual. In my view, there is something out there that is real, substantive, and we can know about it, not know about it in some absolutist way, know everything about everything. I don't believe that there are things, though, that are so obscure in terms of our understanding of reality that we can't navigate it. We might not fully understand everything, but we know enough to be able to navigate our way through it and to answer some deep and important questions. And they are important because they affect things like life and death. You know, decisions on what is the role of the state, what is the role of the individual, how do you make decisions about resource allocations, how do you decide on whether someone should live or die by virtue of their access to medical care or to medications or whatever. There's some big, powerful underlying issues on that. But never lose sight of my targets. My targets are machismo men. And hopefully, by the end of this journey, and I don't know how long this is going to take, and don't know the details of each of the steps on the way, but I do hope that by the end of the journey, we have moved the dial a little bit back into the more positive, upbeat, open, inclusive, embracing and outward-looking view of life that celebrates the best of our humanity, recognises some of the downsides, but also discerns, as I do, despite all that might have come in the preceding comments, I do believe that we are making progress, though as a species, though I also subscribe to a kind of, I think it's a Leninist view, which is that it's either one step forward or two steps back, or it's two steps forward and one step back. Sometimes the progress can feel redundant or unreal or unsubstantiated. Anyway, that is Abbott's Wood. That's what the programme is going to be about. And this bit here is filmed in my garage, and here, this is a fridge. And I've had no input in terms of technology, avatars, text appearing, other videos appearing, but all of that is about to happen. So the other part of what I'll be doing is describing to you the process and mechanics of putting this together, and I will be getting a proper camera, proper audio. I'll be using AI and other software resources to improve the presentational content of these vlogs, and I'll be taking many detours, including into literature, into political theory, into the history of philosophy, and into music. All of this will come together, hopefully, to perform at some point, undefined as yet, a coherent account of why I think now is the time to revisit, renew and refresh the idea of what it is to be a man.